Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the MSP Growth Webinar Series. We've got another exciting episode up today. My name is Stephen. I'm with the top left team. I'm one of the more customer-facing people, so I see a few names in there of people I've talked with, and it's good to see you. It's good to be here. Today, the webinar is focused around, and you can see it on the screen, hopefully, 3 shifts to increase output in your teams. So it's team-focused, people-focused today on this webinar. And I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler. I know our speaker is going to give you more in depth, but these 3 shifts, just to set the stage, we're talking about shifting from skill set to mindset, from the general to the specific, and from external to internal. And if that doesn't totally make sense yet, well, that's why we've got the whole webinar. You can't sum it up in just 30 seconds. So I'll introduce our speaker and we'll hand it over. And that's Stephen Passacil. You can see his handsome face down there in the corner. He is our VP of People here at the group of companies at the MSP and at top left. And we are very excited to have him back to talk about this important topic. So Steve, I'm just going to hand it over to you, and you've got your slide deck, and you can go right ahead.
I appreciate that, Stephen, and hi everybody. I'm really excited to spend this next couple of minutes with you, talking about something that's really near and dear to my heart, and I'll share my story in a little bit. But I'm really passionate about this idea of trying to come up with ways to help our people, our teams, increase their output. In other words, like get more work done, while at the same time making sure that they are in healthy, good spots as individuals. And so some of what we're going to talk about today is kind of just those shifts that Stephen teased, but also just kind of some of the nuances that we as leaders need to pay attention to when we try to keep our teams motivated and engaged. So really happy that you've trusted us to come and see what this is all about, and I trust this is going to be a good use of your time. I don't know if you can see this right now, but maybe the little kind of screens where each one of our heads is off to the side is a little bit too small, but I'll just call out the elephant in the room. If you can't see this little bit of a welt on my forehead, I had a disagreement with my treadmill the other day, and it decided to throw me off. I've been thinking about maybe putting a webinar together on things not to do while you are trying to concentrate on your activity on the treadmill. But anyway, that's another story that I can share if you're really interested. But if you saw it and it was kind of one of these awkward things, it's like, and you can't keep your eyes off of that, that's why. But I want to just, as we get into our time together, I do want to take an opportunity to connect a little bit with each one of you. So if you could just do me a favor, I'd love to know where you're from. If you could just throw into the chat just kind of where geographically you are this morning or this afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. But I'd love to know. And then Stephen, if you could just kind of rhyme out as people put in the chat where they're from, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, that's great. We got somebody local here. We got Daniel from Abbotsford. That's up here in Canada where we are. We've got Brian at Dallas, Denver, Mike from New Zealand. Great. Yeah, thanks guys. And thanks for jumping in the chat. This is always a lot more fun when we have engagement and we know people are actually listening to what we're saying.
Oh man, so right away there's opportunity to connect. We have a New Zealander on our team, and so really glad that you're joining us. I've yet to get there, but that's on my bucket list. And then the folks who are from Dallas and Denver, right away, it took me off into a dreamland. So I'm a Texan by birth, spent a lot of time in the Longview area. So anytime I dream of Texas, it's a good dream. And then Denver, I'm a Denver Broncos fan. And the reason I'm a Broncos fan, even though I'm from the Texas area, is my cousins used to live in Denver. And so whenever we would visit during the holidays, it would be like Broncos stuff everywhere. And so I caught the fever very early on. And so if you're a Broncos fan like I am, then you're excited too about Russell Wilson joining the roster there. Here we are. Here I am. I I could go off in all sorts of different directions, but I want to respect the fact that we're here to learn some things about increasing output in our team. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a roadmap here, just so you can understand where I'm going and what you can expect. And so the first thing that I want to do before I present a framework to you is I want to share a little bit of my story so that you understand kind of where I'm coming from and why I am so passionate about talking about this stuff. And then the second thing is I've put together, based on my experience, what I'm calling an employee output framework. And it's just some of the things that I've learned over the years of working with people and teams and trying to motivate and engage as part of my role. Is I've created a tool that hopefully will be useful for you and others as you think about how to do that in your own context. And then lastly, what I want to do is I want to present an opportunity to you if you really kind of land on this stuff and are interested in learning more. The reality is, for this particular time, is I'm going to scratch the surface of a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about. The opportunity is going to be an invitation to you to engage with me on a more deeper level in the future. And so hang in there for that toward the end. But I'll start with my story. And it's not an overly exciting one, but I think it's significant, and maybe you're going to resonate a little bit with it. And so I'm just calling this part of my presentation, part of my story, hitting the output wall. And so probably about 4 years ago, I burned out. And when I say burn out, I mean, there's a whole range of definitions about what that could look like. But for me, burning out was actually needing to take time off of work based on my doctor's order for me to be able to just get away and sort some things out in my life, some patterns, some habits that were not good or healthy, some belief systems that I had going on in my life. Because one of the things that is true of me is I'm an achiever. At least that's what some of the personality profiles that I've taken over the years have told me. And so one of the things that I get satisfaction and self-worth out of is doing more work. And so part of the whole top left ecosystem is to be able to answer the question, how can we help our people get more work done? How can we help our people get more output? And so it was very rewarding for me whenever I would do more and more work. But one of the things that started to happen was I started to have some physical symptoms in addition to just being overwhelmed and tired. And one day I literally physically could not get out of bed. And so in hindsight, one of the things that started to happen was I had this approach, this mentality that, oh, I'm starting to get tired. I'm starting to get worn down. I'm starting to get burned out. My response first was initially to just do more work, because by doing that, I could maybe just figure it out and solve the problem by just accomplishing more things. So push through and do more was the first thing that I decided to do, but that actually got me into more trouble. The second thing that happened was I didn't tell anybody about it because as an achiever, one of the things that's important is that other people see me as being an achiever as well. And so if I went to someone on my team and admitted, hey, I'm really struggling here, that might be seen as a sign of weakness. And so I kept it to myself. And as I continued to do more and more work, hoping that I would just simply work my way out of my problem, then I hit the wall. And so one of the things that, since I've been out of that and consider myself to be relatively healthy now and back in a good place where I can be productive, I really wanted to, out of that experience, put something together like we're going to talk about today to help others who might be struggling in this area. Or if you who are in this webinar have not struggled in this area yourself, maybe you have someone on your team that has, or might be going through something similar. Now, the danger is if they don't tell anybody, how do you know? But hopefully by the end of today, you're going to have a framework and a set of tools that you can begin to start to notice these things either in your own life or in the life of people on your team. And so that's just a little, I'm more than happy to go into more depth with this, but that's just kind of a summary of where I've been in the past And those experiences have led me to making this presentation today, and hopefully more in the future, because this is a real problem, especially in the tech industry. There's a whole lot of research that's been done about how the high percentage of tech workers, whether they're technicians or engineers, that are burning out. Because the name of the game for us from a business perspective is to get more work done. And so the question again that we're hopefully answering today is, how do we do that? How do we get more output from our people, but maintain their health as individuals and keep them in a good place, keep them engaged, and keep them motivated? And so that's kind of the intro to what it is that we're going to be talking about today. I'd really love you to throw something in the chat again. Like, does this land with you? Is this something that you've seen in your workplace? Maybe you've experienced this yourself. I'm not going to ask for details, but if this does land with you, and if this is something that you think is worth having a conversation about, just throw that in the chat, just like a yes or like an amen or whatever it is, just to give me an indication that this is something that is relevant in our lives as leaders in the tech industry. Tell me what you see, Stephen?
Yeah, I've got a yes, a definitely yes, and a hell yeah. So
Okay.
sounds like this is resonating.
Oh man, I mean, the stories, right? And again, without inviting anybody to share, man, we've got some scars maybe, and some war stories about things that we've experienced as leaders and as workers in the tech industry. And so again, this is hopefully going to be the start of a longer conversation, but I wanted to share this framework that I've developed, and we're going to get into this now, that will hopefully help us at least be on the same page with some of the things that we need to be concerned about as leaders. And so this is going to be the kind of the skeleton or the model of the framework that I'm going to provide for you. We're recording this webinar, and that will send you the recording afterwards, and so you'll be able to see the visuals here. But if you're a tactile kinesthetic learner like I am, if you want to just even now grab a piece of paper, draw the three circles the way you see them, and the lines and the dots. And as I'm revealing the different things that go in each of those spaces, you can take notes and come along the journey with me. But if not, listen, and we'll fill out this framework together. So Stephen mentioned at the very beginning of this webinar that I'm going to ask you to consider three shifts in your mind, or mind shifts. And Stephen mentioned them. It's going to be from external to internal. From Stephen, help me out, man. From external to internal, it's going to be from general to specific. And then from, what's the third one? What's the third shift, Stephen?
From the skill set to the mindset.
Thank you. I knew you would come through. You're a good listener. So those are going to be the mind shifts that we're going to talk about. But I'm really going to give you tools to help you understand how to make those shifts. And that's what we're going to focus on. And so if you've drawn this model out, if not, that's okay. We're going to start in the very middle, because what we are after is more output from our teams. Let's agree on that right now. That might not be something when we talk about things like mental health and overwhelm and burnout. We want to rush to make sure that we care for our people and that we keep our teams in a good place. But let's not apologize for the fact that as managers and leaders, we really do want more output from our people. It's the way the business grows. It's how we serve our clients better. So let's just boldly and confidently say that we want more output. So if we start with that in the middle, how do we go about getting more output from our people? Well, we need to keep them motivated. That's the first thing. A motivated employee is going to wake up and already be primed to do more work and to do quality work and to be engaged. Because if someone is motivated and engaged with what they're doing, they're going to show up primed for more output. But it's not just a matter of them feeling motivated. and feeling engaged. It's a matter of also demonstrating and having evidence of growth. Now we're talking, when we say the word growth, we're talking about technical growth. And so are they learning? Are they growing in their skills that they need to perform their job? And that means practicing, that means like getting certifications, all those types of things. But it also does mean personal growth. Are they doing the things that are going to set them up for success in terms of, do they have the right habits in place to be able to perform at high levels to increase their output? And so starting with output in the middle, we're starting to work our way out to the edges. Now we're going to get into the specific shifts that I'm asking you to think about making in your own life, but also so that you can coach and teach and lead others on your teams how to make those same shifts. And so what I'm asking you to consider is this shift, first of all, from external to internal. So when I'm talking specifically about the ways that we are motivated and engaged. So if we're motivated and engaged externally, that means that what we need, what our team needs, is you to either dangle a carrot in front of them or follow behind them with a stick to make sure that their output continues at a high level. But maybe that's not a good response. Maybe we need to help our people, including ourselves, be more internally motivated. So we'll talk about that one shift. The other shift I'm asking you to make is to shift from kind of a more general mindset to a specific mindset. We around top left in our group of companies here, we like to say things like clarity is kindness. And so we know that if we are more specific in terms of what we are requiring our people to do, it's going to set them up for success. So if they're engaged and they are feeling like they are growing and they're demonstrating growth, the way that we can do that is by being more specific in our directives. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And the last shift that we're going to talk about today is from a focus on skill set to much more of a focus on mindset. And I'm not saying that we should abandon all focus on skills, because you heard me say just a little while ago that it is important from a growth standpoint to engage in learning all the time, to enhance our skills, to be sharp. As we all know, the tech industry, technology changes very rapidly, and we need to be ready for those changes, in fact, ahead of the curve. So we're not abandoning a skill set focus, but we're shifting to also being equally, if not more, concerned with the mindset of ourselves and also of our team as we're trying to increase the output that we want from them. So those are the three shifts that we're going to talk through in a minute. Now I'm going to back up and I'm going to start to talk about the things that we can specifically do to shift these things in ourselves and in our teammates. So let's start with the internal mindset. But before, I'm gonna take a breath, because I've put a bunch of things out there. There's a bunch of words and shapes and colors. I want to make sure that we're at least tracking together with the progression of how we're thinking about this stuff. We're starting with output in the middle. And what we're saying with the green words is that we need those three things in place in order to increase output: motivation, engagement, and growth. The bigger red words are some things that we need to put in place on an ongoing kind of habitual basis in order to continue to get to the center to increase that output. I just want to, if you could just throw a quick yes in the chat. Are we tracking with this way of thinking, with the framework as we built it out so far? Can you just give me some indication that we're on the same page? Because I've thrown a lot of stuff at you so far.
Yeah, we've got a couple of yeses coming in, and and I'll just mention, if for anybody who hasn't been on one of these MSP growth webinars, we're very interactive. You guys are here live, so you get the benefit of, if you have a question, you drop that down in the chat. Either I can field that, or we can just interrupt Steve while he's talking and say, hey, Steve, go deeper into this point for us. So yeah, definitely one person said it's a little fuzzy, but interested in
Yeah.
hearing more. So it might get fleshed out as you explain some of the context.
Yeah, I really appreciate the person who mentioned it's a little bit fuzzy. I really appreciate that honest feedback. There is a lot here, and I promise that as I unpack these other things that fill out the framework, it should become more clear. But I appreciate the honest feedback. So let's keep going here and talk about the first shift from an external mindset or external focus to an internal focus when it comes to keeping our teams motivated and engaged. The first tool, or the first thing that we can actually do, is to focus on our people's and our own capabilities. So here's a couple of things that I think about that. So if an employee does not have the time, energy, resources, and skills to accomplish a task at hand, something that you've given them to do, then regardless of how motivating you make it, it's never going to happen properly. And so we're talking about an actual capability to do a task. Because if something causes someone stress, it's unlikely they'll feel motivated to sit down and get it done. And even if they suck it up like I tried to do and just keep doing more, they're not going to be in a healthy place and in a productive place. And so when we talk about capabilities, we're talking about someone's understanding about their ability to get the task done. And the way that we as managers and leaders can help someone feel more capable is through training and practice. And so if you're making notes, when you hear the word capability and when you think about living this framework out with your teams, capability literally is training and practice. And if you provide that space for your people to focus in those areas, they're going to be much more capable, and they're going to feel like they're that much more capable. So as an example of that, one of the things that we have been saying for years at our MSP is we're dedicated to training. We're committed to training. We're going to provide time. We're going to provide resources and those types of things. But we always go back to getting so busy as we sell more and clients want more. The training was always stuff that seemed to be punted to the side. And it was something that we never got around to really fulfilling. But we've worked hard over the last probably year and a half to really make this idea of training and learning and development a part of our culture. I wouldn't say we're like firing on all cylinders yet, but we're finally at the point where we're actually saying training is important, and we're actually doing that as well. So we're blocking time out in people's schedules. We're giving them things that they can study and learn and improve. And so it's all about this idea of making them more capable, but also making them feel like they are more capable. The second thing that we as managers can do is focus on this idea in our people of belief. And there are two kinds of belief that I think we need to foster in our people. The first one, and I just mentioned the idea of capability, the first kind of belief is someone's belief in their own capability. It's one thing for you to know that your employee has the capability to do something, but it's quite another for them to know and believe in their own capability in themselves. And so what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to keep an eye out for people on your team who are doing really, really well. And then call them out on that. And it's having conversations with them about, hey, you're really good at this. I'm going to give you more opportunities to do that which you are good at. It's just seeing that so that you, by your confidence that you have in them, they can begin to feel confident in the same way about themselves. So that's belief in their capability. The other type of belief, the second one, is a belief in results. So if you ask a team member of yours to do something a particular way, but they don't believe that it's possible, they don't believe that the way you want them to do it is right, or they don't believe that doing it your way and getting that result will get him or her where they want to be, then it's really, really hard to get any kind of output at all. And so if you're able to demonstrate that by doing it a certain way, they're going to get a certain result, that's going to increase their own internal motivation to be able to trust that what you've told them is true and good. And then they'll be able to do that almost in perpetuity, because you've given them that experience and they have the trust to know that because they have a higher belief in themselves and in the process, it's going to take them a long way to getting stuff done. So if capability is increased through training and practice, one's belief is enhanced through experience and trust. The third thing, when we talk about more of an internal mindset, is this idea of desire. If you're motivated, you have real reasons for moving forward in life. You see a purpose, and you believe that the time, energy, resources you're expending are worth the risk of trying to get a result. But how do you know? How do you know what someone cares about? One of the things that I'm going to really encourage us all to do a better job of as leaders is, if we have trouble understanding what someone on our team cares about or what motivates them, what we just need to do is ask them. It's not a hard science, guys and gals, to be able to just sit down and go, hey, I'm having problems knowing what gets you out of bed in the morning. Why don't you share some things about what gets you out of bed in the morning? Because how will we know if we don't ask? It's not, we can't sit here and just expect it through osmosis to come into our field of view, and then we've magically learned what motivates our people and our team. And so if you want to know what motivates your team, ask them. And then you can provide the environment in which they flourish so that you can get more output out of them. So that's the first thing the first shift from external to internal. And some of these things that we've mentioned, like capability, belief, desire, they're not necessarily things that we think about all the time. You know, it's more for us about, for top left, if you use our product, we can get more output if people visualize their work. If we provide project management tools for people to be able to move work through the pipeline faster. Those are things that we're passionate about those things as well. And we need to continue to focus on those parts of our work. But we can't forget about these things, like what motivates and engages our people, because we as managers are perfectly positioned to be able to focus on those things as well. Okay, we are making phenomenal time. And so I'm just going to keep firing away and talk about the second shift that I'm asking you to consider making. And it's this idea of shifting from a general mindset to more of a specific focus. And here's what I mean by that. The first thing that I'll talk about, the first tool for you to think about, is this idea of understanding. There's this thought out there. It's a concept called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is essentially this. It's the idea that once you know, and I'm talking about you being a manager, a leader, once you know and understand something, it becomes far more difficult to imagine what it was like before you knew it. So here's a practical example of what we're talking about when we talk about the curse of knowledge. We're all familiar with the concept of SOPs. Process is typically very, very important to each one of us. If you're like us, we have a virtual library in our wiki full of standard operating procedures for virtually everything. And we're encouraging our people to add to that daily. And go back to things that have been in that library for years and make changes to make sure that everything is up to date. So there's knowledge at our fingertips. But sometimes we run into this hiccup where some people, even though they have access to all this knowledge, sometimes they don't understand what it is that we need them to do based on all this knowledge that we have. So the curse of knowledge also practically for us says that when we're passing concepts on to our people, we may skip over the obvious steps. We might use words they don't understand or just take for granted that they should already know this stuff because we do. And so if it's second nature to us, well, it's obvious. And so it should be second nature and obvious to everybody else that reads what's in this library of knowledge. But obviously, if we're not careful as managers and leaders, we can get ourselves into a lot of trouble, because if people, like I was when I shared my story, if we're reluctant to share what's going on with ourselves, with others, maybe we might hear something that we're told to do but not understand, but we won't tell anybody that we don't understand. And so we get into this cycle of, oh, you know what, I'll just figure it out. Or I'll just, if I spend more time, you know, I'll figure it out eventually and it'll work. Because that's what I do as a technician, as an engineer, I solve problems. But before you know it, hours have gone by when what should have taken minutes to complete. We've created more problems now than when we started. And then finally, when things are broken beyond repair, then we go to someone and say, hey, I'm in a bit of a pickle here. So this idea of understanding asks us to really avoid or be aware of the curse of knowledge, and to not assume in any way that people know what's going on. So we need to be really, really specific in that way about what it is that we're telling our people to do. In addition to being focusing on this idea of understanding, being more specific also then results in just the ease of doing something. And when we explain something that we want to get done to our team and our people, are we making it as easy as possible for them to succeed? So a couple of things to do to make things easier is like give 2 or 3 options of how to get things done. Now that might seem counterintuitive to the idea of being more specific, but doing that might allow, like if there is more than one way, then give them a couple ways, then let them choose. And then either way, they're going to be successful. But if there aren't, if there is only one way to do something, then why not just simply be explicit and specific and say, there is no other way to do this but this way. State that and then provide the solution. And then the other thing that we can do to be more specific and to give more kind of ease of instruction is before you send them off to do things, and before you rush them off because you've got 5 other things that you need to tackle today, ask them to just take 30 seconds and repeat back what you told them to do. Don't forget that very important step, because they might have heard something that you had no intention for them to hear. So get them to stop, look you in the eye, or look you in the Slack or email, however you communicate, and just say, hey, can you just repeat back what you heard me say? That is going to just save untold amount of trouble later on if there was an unintended miscommunication down the road. So we're talking from an ease perspective, we're talking about clarity and simplicity. So the more that you can do as a manager and a leader to make things clear and simple, the more output you're going to get from your people. And then the last thing when we talk about being more specific is having an outcomes focus. Now, outcome is different than output in this way. Increasing output and getting there faster means understanding the end game sooner. So we just talked about, here's exactly what I want, right? When we talked about ease and understanding, here's exactly what I want. Don't do anything different. This is exactly what we want. Give more details up front and possibly share the information through alternate channels. If there is more than one way to communicate something, don't worry about over communicating. send it in Slack, send an email, link to the SOP if that's where you store your SOPs. Print out a handout. It's always a good use of your time, even though you might not think about it in the moment, to over communicate to make sure that they understand the exact outcome that you want in a particular instance. So the key word there is outcome, but it's also over communication. So we need to get better at that as leaders. So the last shift I mentioned earlier was from skill set to mindset. And again, I'll repeat this. It's not that I'm asking us to abandon a focus on skill development, but I'm asking us to spend an equal, if not more, amount of time focusing on keeping our people in the right mindset. And so we're going to talk about some things that I think are really important to consider. And so the first one is this idea of paying attention to the emotion of it all. Now, when I say pay attention to the emotion of it all, I am not talking about doing things to get people in touch with their feelings. I'm not talking about setting up times in your calendars to, sit in a circle and okay, we're each going to share for 15 minutes what's going on in our heart. I frankly I'm not opposed to those types of things, but that's not what I'm suggesting when I ask you to focus on emotion. Here's maybe I'm gonna jump ahead a couple of slides here because I want to show you, and I'll come back to this in a minute. I want to show you when I talk about the importance of emotion, when we ask for the jump from skill set to mindset, here's maybe a visual that will help you understand what exactly it is that I mean. So I've listed several things that I think we can all agree are skills that we as managers and leaders try to develop in ourselves and then foster on our team. So communicating is a skill. Goal setting, we all do goal setting. That's a skill that we employ. Motivating people is a skill that can be learned and practiced. Maybe we have resources and time to be able to take our people through team building exercises and different things to help individuals work better together. Leading change. We're all involved in leading change, and that's a skill that can be learned over time. But so that's a skill set approach. But what I'm talking about is a mindset approach. And a mindset believes that everything is possible. We can communicate something that we want someone to get done. And this goes back to kind of the capability, belief, and desire. If we don't have the mindset that, you know what, yeah, you can do this. We've never done this before, but you know what? Because we have this mindset that everything is possible, we're not going to be afraid to try something new. We're not going to be afraid to fail. We're going to go ahead and take some steps and learn and document and get to a place where, yeah, we struggled today, but it was exciting because we learned. If we didn't have the everything is possible mindset, it'd be really hard to stay engaged and motivated. So that's an example there. The other one, we can set goals all we want, but are we really passionate about what it is that we're doing? Or are we just setting goals and doing the work just because, well, that's what we do? I'm just going to earn my paycheck. Just please leave me alone. I really love working remotely by myself. No, I think as managers and leaders, it's fair to say that we do want to ignite a certain level of passion in our people so that they can feel good emotionally about what it is that they're doing and where they're at. Now, this might seem like a little bit of a scary concept to some of us because, we've never kind of experienced this type of thing in our own working lives. And so if this is a little bit of a weird concept, this focus on emotion, that I'm okay with that. That's okay. And if you're not focused in this area, it doesn't make you a bad manager or a bad leader. The encouragement is, though, for you to consider what it would be like to focus on this type of a mindset. Motivating people is a skill, But really, from a mindset perspective, you're doing all of these things to help connect people to each other, to connect people to your clients, to connect people to the work that they're doing so that they can feel more internally motivated to do the things that we're asking them to do. Team building exercises are a lot of fun. Maybe you've done some high ropes courses. Maybe you've done some the stereotypical, like the trust fall stuff. I haven't done that in decades. We're about building teams, but really from a mindset perspective, we're about accountability. That's what we're trying to foster when we're building teams, is so that I know that someone on my team has my back. Or if I need help, I don't have to be embarrassed like I was 4 years ago to tell anybody that I was struggling. I can go to someone on my team and just say, hey, you know what? I'm almost ready to take a couple days off here because I'm not feeling great. And then for someone to say, wow, thanks for sharing that. I'm not feeling great either. So you give other people freedom then to share as well, in a spirit of accountability. And then we really try to use this word gratitude in our shop, just as a way to, maybe we don't use the word a lot, but we try to create an environment where people are looking out for the good that other people are doing. Because if we're not doing that and we're solely focused on ourselves and the work that only we are doing, it's really hard to keep people engaged and motivated and excited about growing. And then our output is going to be stagnant. So that's just a couple of an example of what I mean when I talk about emotion. So notice I didn't say anything in here like sitting in a circle and sharing your feelings. Okay. What I'm talking about is the mindset that goes above and beyond just checking off the boxes and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. It's paying attention to those things that are going on inside someone as they think about who they are and the work that they're doing. All right, I'm going to go back now to the framework here. So the second thing, if emotion is the one thing that I want you to think about, the second thing is this idea of self-image. And again, I want to just throw a caveat out there. When I talk about self-image, I'm not talking about the Instagram self-image. I'm not talking about the primping and the preening that's become really popular. And I'm not talking about how people look. That is the furthest thing from my mind. But what I'm talking about when I use the word self-image is how someone sees and evaluates himself or herself in a variety of situations. And so 4 years ago, when I hit that wall that I was talking about, I had a very low self-image because I got to the point where I kept working hard. I kept trying to get more output, but I wasn't. And so it was a cycle of failure that I believed that I was in. And so I didn't think I was winning at anything. And I think I couldn't win at anything. And so the burnout for me was getting to the point where, you know what, why even keep trying? So that's what I mean when I talk about self-image. We cannot, friends, just simply assume that someone will just do what you ask them to do. If they don't see themselves as capable or worthy, it'll be that much harder to achieve a desired outcome. So just a really quick story, about this with one of our team members here. And I'm obviously not going to share names because that person would really hunt me down. But one of the things that this person sometimes will do is I'll get a Slack at kind of the end of the day, and the Slack message to me will be something like this: Steve, I've been sitting here for an hour staring at the ceiling tile because I don't want to do this task, and I don't know what to do about it. And so right away, you get on the phone or on a Zoom call or whatever, and you start to ask questions about what's going on and what are you experiencing. And getting to the bottom of it, it's like, I really don't, this is what this person says. I don't like the work. I don't get the work. Therefore, I don't want to do the work. And so there's a number of different things that we can do, is because the work needs to get done. Like it's not like we can ever be as leaders or managers in a situation where we're just getting people to tell us what they do and do not like to do. Work has to get done. So for this particular individual, well, you've got this thing before you, and your manager who gave this bit of work to do obviously believes that you can do it. So what's the holdback? And so those are the types of questions that we're asking. And so there's the combination of putting people in positions to succeed and giving them work that they can be passionate about. But the other part too is that we can push our people a little bit more than we think we'd like to, and they might be willing to be pushed, because that growth piece comes in that we can help people have a healthier self-image by the things that we have our people do, the words that we use when we're leading and managing them. And so in this particular instance with this individual that I talked about, a lot of it is just habitually saying, well, no, you have this work in front of you because you can do it. That's why you've been given this work. And so it's just constantly doing the work of reaffirming and making sure that this person sees the value in him or herself. I'm trying to be as protective as I can. So the point here from a self-image standpoint is we have to get better at noticing and calling out the good in our people. And then we have to also equip them to do that which we believe that they can do. This is the work of leadership, gang. This is the work of managing. And we have to, I'm convinced, get better at this. Now, when I burnt out and I mentioned I had that really low self-image, I didn't blame anybody for that. So I didn't go to my manager, my supervisor, and saying, this is all your fault. Like I had to own what I was feeling, because I and I alone am responsible for what goes on. So I'm not talking about assigning blame, but I'm saying that you as a manager and a leader, we all can do a lot more to motivate and keep engaged and foster growth in our people, just by how we reinforce the value that we see in them. Maybe they don't see the same value, so we have to spend that much more time convincing them of what we already know is true. And then the last thing is this idea of team. Not much to say here. This idea of really convincing our people through experience, through the things that we as managers and leaders reinforce. There is no such thing as working in isolation. Many of us are in remote situations. Many of us prefer that. A lot of our employees prefer to be remote. I don't know how many times I've tried to invite people to come back to the office, but it's met with resistance. I don't blame them, because they're set up really well at home. They can be more productive in a lot of cases. So I have no problem with the tension there. But even if we're remote, there is no such thing as working in isolation. We have to be super clear on the purpose of what we're doing. And we have to create an environment where everyone is learning and teaching. That last point is really important for us to, I think about, is if we're the only ones that are teaching and giving direction, that is not sustainable. As we get more output from our teams and our businesses grow, we have to come up with a way to get people who are learning from us to begin to teach others, because it can't be all on you. So the more that you can, as a team, get people working together, but then also delegating the task of leadership, management, and teaching down the line, it's going to foster that much more growth and output, and it's going to result in more motivated and engaged people. So that's the framework in less than, probably, I want to say that was less than 40 minutes. Stephen, of hopefully not rushing through, but certainly not spending the time that I think we could spend really drilling deeply into these concepts that may be foreign to some of us. But I am so passionate about this stuff because this is what helped me to kind of get out of the rut that I was in when I hit that wall that I shared that I hit 4 years ago. I'm convinced of this stuff, you guys and gals. And I'm convinced that if you spend even just a fraction of your time thinking about how to implement some of these things, it's going to help you and it's going to help your teams get more output while staying motivated, engaged, and in this cycle of growth at the same time. So I'm going to take a little bit of a breath here, Stephen, and
Yeah,
I'm going to just speed through that. Before I present an opportunity, is there anything that anybody is like, okay, I need to say this, whether it's, yeah, I get this, and I'm going to commit to spending more time on some of this stuff, or if you have questions or disagreements, just throw something in the chat, and I'm going to do my best to address some of those things. Just keeping in mind, I am going to respect your time, and we're going to end at the top of the hour. So I want to make sure to get this opportunity in. But if there are any things to talk through right now, we do have a couple minutes.
Yeah, and while Steve's taking a quick breather, I just want to reiterate, like, if there's a key phrase or word or something that stuck out to you, whether it's this is a real big takeaway or this is something I'm still totally confused about, feel free to drop that in the chat. We love the real feedback. Yeah, as Steve mentions, there's going to be an opportunity to connect and go a bit deeper in this, and we'll tell you about that shortly. But yeah, if you have a word or a phrase or something that stuck out to you, we'd love to hear about that in the chat. Yeah, nothing specific right now, but I'm hoping everybody's still paying attention at this point. But
well, you know
Steve,
what? Yeah, that's totally fine. It's easy. So we talk about the curse of knowledge. This is something that I sometimes suffer with. Is I'm passionate about this stuff. This is where I spend a lot of my time in my role, and so these concepts and terms and the things that I've talked about are very familiar to me. So I recognize and admit that I might be suffering from that curse even as I present this material to you. If that is the case, I wonder if this opportunity that I want to present is going to be valuable to you. So
I'll just add one comment that did come through, Steve.
Oh, good.
Just mentioning about, somebody's got annual reviews coming up with their team in a couple of weeks, and focusing on, one person in particular that they feel needs some coaching around increasing output, and also them personally increasing their skills as a team leader. So, and then we've got one specific question that just came in, and we'll hopefully have a few seconds for this. But what do you recommend regarding team members who seem to have developed that low self-image? Team members who used to be rock stars and now are struggling to meet those basic table stakes, the core things.
Oh, I love it.
If you can do that in less than 60 seconds.
It's a beautiful question, and it really is getting at the one thing that I talked about, and I'm going to answer the performance review question at the same time. It's being okay as managers and leaders to call out what the actual issue is, and to be able to go and say, hey, I perceive that you're struggling in the area of self-image. And I'm not saying you use these exact words, but it's just say, hey, this is what I notice. Am I out to lunch here? Let's have a conversation about where you're at, because you used to be a superstar. Now you're struggling. There's something else going on, isn't there? And then just invite them into a conversation to begin to share what's going on in his or her life. From a performance review perspective, what we have done is we've done two things. We've switched it from annual to quarterly. because things are changing so much, and that's our rhythm here. I'm not suggesting that everyone do that, but we have a quarterly rhythm. And so as part of evaluating performance, we also invite them to help author what their output should look like. And so when we evaluate on a quarterly basis, then we take time for them to say, hey, what is it that you want to accomplish in the next quarter by the next review? And so obviously it has to align with our greater goals as a company, but giving them ownership and authorship of what it is that they want their output to look like, it puts them in a better spot to be more motivated and engaged. So even asking the question, hey, what do you want to accomplish in this next period? Here's what I think you can do. Does this line up with what you want to be doing? And don't be afraid to have that conversation, ask that question. And don't be afraid if the answer is not what you want to hear, because that's just going to give you more insight to setting smarter goals for your people. Okay, Stephen, I'm just going to give the opportunity here.
Go
what I'm
for it.
offering, if I want to, if you resonate with some of this stuff, and even if there's not a lot of clarity, if you believe that this is worth digging into more, I want to invite you into what I'm just calling a mini mastermind. I would love to sit down with anyone who wants to dig deeper. 3 sessions, 1 hour each, so a total of 3 hours, where we're going to dig deeper into these concepts, maybe share some more personal stories to connect and engage, build a little community. There's no cost to this. The only thing is that we would just have to, whoever wants to, we just have to coordinate our schedules to make it work. But I'm more than happy to do this because there's so much more we can talk about at a deeper level. It doesn't have to be everyone in this room. If nobody's interested, that's okay too. But if you are interested, just put a yes in the chat, and we'll make sure to reach out to you, and I'll get something in our calendars. It could be one person, it could be 5, it could be whatever. But this is something that I'm so passionate about, and I think will help you. If you want to engage in a little bit deeper level, this is an opportunity that I want to provide. So put yes if you want to, and then like I said, I'll reach out and we'll set something up. Even if you don't want to engage in this opportunity, you've got my email there. If you have any questions about this stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to even have one-on-one conversations. You can see my social media stuff down there. Connect with me. And if you do reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, just make sure you say where, refer to the webinar, because if I don't know you, I tend not to connect with people I don't know. So just make that connection. So
I'll just add one extra point that we are sending out this recording. So if you're not here live and you're listening to this after the fact, that email address or that social media, feel free to make use of that and connect with Steve or with the community, and we'll make sure to be sending this out and following up with people.
Love it. So I'm going to turn the fire hose off now. Thanks everybody for your attention, for taking a little bit of a risk and coming out and hearing some of these thoughts. And I hope it was a good use of your time. I enjoyed it immensely. Thanks for your engagement, and I hope to see you in another venue soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.